Hey students, this video will help you with your first day of editing. So for day one of editing your final draft for your essay on civilization, we're going to focus on the organization of your essay. Now the following video will provide directions concerning what you must do for your first night of essay revision and editing. These strategies should be used on all essays, not just this one, from now on, to the infinity future of all essay writing, ever. Make sure to do it. So for starters, let's talk about the overall structure. Think about the purpose of each paragraph. And in your case, as AP writers who are getting ready for college writing, you're not just going to think about paragraphs, you're going to think about sections that have paragraphs within them. So at minimum, you should have an introduction, a first section, a second section, and a conclusion. You might have a third section or possibly even a fourth section depending on kind of how complex your essay is going to be. But then within those sections, you should have paragraphs. The reason why it's a good idea to think of it as sections is because within a section, all of your paragraphs should be about the same topic, just getting more and more in depth into the topic. And then your second section might switch to another topic that's related to your essay, but a different topic ultimately. So for instance, you might be talking about problems and then solutions, and then probably how that reflects today's modern era. You might be talking about literary examples and then historical examples and then what that means for today, I don't know. But you'll have sections with paragraphs in them. Also remember that each of these are going to be more than one paragraph. If you think back to the sample essay we looked at, the introduction I believe was 6 paragraphs. The first section was 3, the second section was 3 paragraphs, and the conclusion I believe was 2 paragraphs. So make sure that the essay is as long as it needs to be. The next thing you need to ask yourself is if you need to rearrange your body paragraphs. Since you guys are writing such a complex essay, there is likely going to need to be some rearranging, either within the paragraphs themselves or between the paragraphs as a whole. And we'll get a little more to later in this video as to how you should rearrange them. But start thinking about if your paragraphs would better work for you in a different order. And then make sure that your essay has clearly established the sections. How do you do that? Through transitioning. Make sure that at the beginning of each of your paragraphs you indicate what section it's working towards. And again, we'll talk more about that later as well. Now, once you're done thinking about the overall structure, you want to start thinking about the interior structure. So let's start with the introduction, the hook, the very beginning. So the hook is really important, and you need to remember that one does not simply write the first sentence of an essay. The first sentence of an essay is incredibly important. It decides really if, people are actually going to want to read it, because they get about a sentence in, and then they're either going to keep going, or they're never going to look at your essay again, and you don't want that latter one. So, for a hook, you guys in the past have known that for a hook you can have a quote, a vivid description, an anecdote, a definition, or a question. And so for this one, I really want you to push yourself, and your hook should be narrative or a current event or historical fact, something a little more lengthy. Again, if you go back and think about our sample essay, the hook was this really cool, and not very long, but really cool narrative about shopping for eggs in a grocery store. And so it was very relevant to the paper's topic, but it was also very clever. So think about a really clever, attention-grabbing way to start your essay. And then you want to make sure that after your hook, it can transition into your paper topic, specifically your background. So the next part is the background of your introduction, and this will likely be a whole paragraph on its own after the hook. But you want to make sure that you just don't have your hook and then jump into your background. You need to have some kind of transitioning that expresses how these two sections are connected. So make sure you start your background with a transition that connects the idea of your hook to what's happening in your background. Then, does the background provide the necessary information for the essay, such as definitions? You want to talk about the important people, places, definitions, information along those lines that will serve as the foundation for the rest of your essay. So with background information, you want to think about it as the building blocks so that people aren't confused when they move on to the body paragraphs of your essay. Make sure that you don't get too detailed in your background because you don't want to steal away from your body paragraphs, So this should be all of the definition and people, places, things, the who, what, where, when, why kind of necessary to understand your body paragraphs. So check to make sure that you have that. Then, very important, you need to check to make sure you have your thesis. The thesis is the most important part of your essay. It is the heart of your essay. It's what says, it explains the purpose of your essay. Without a thesis, people don't understand why they're reading what you wrote. So for starters, make sure again that you transition into your thesis. It shouldn't occur abruptly. It should naturally kind of go from your background to your thesis, showing how they connect. Your thesis might be its own paragraph. It might be connected to the background. It's up to you to decide how it works best. Now you need to make sure that your thesis states the opposition, states your position, and then explains how you will prove your position. So these are some fill in the blanks. Many of you guys, a lot of you guys, most of you guys, potentially all of you guys are past needing to use a kind of fill in the blank template, but it'll give you some place to start so that you can then write your own completely original and unique thesis. But some examples might say, while many claim that opposition, the undeniable reality is your position because first point, second point. Example 2, in the past we have learned the opposition to be true, but recent findings indicate a new perspective of your own position, where first point and second point prove that change is ultimately necessary. Third example is unacceptable for opposition to still occur today, when in fact we showed your position due to the point that you'll use to prove it. So you should have a thesis. While you don't need to necessarily have it follow what your essay is going to do step by step, it should explain the overall purpose of your essay and what will occur in your essay. Now, we're done talking about your introduction. You should make sure that that introduction is spot on, probably 2 to 3 paragraphs, and fully introduces what the topic is of your essay. Make sure, for instance, that you really clearly explain what you mean by civilization, because every single one of you has come up with your own really cool interpretation of what the word means, and you're going to need to make sure to clarify that before you begin in on your section. So now that you've thought about each of your sections, you want to make sure, we already talked about that. So for each of those sections, you'll have body paragraphs within those sections, okay? And your body paragraphs are going to have a topic sentence, a piece of evidence, elaboration, a piece of evidence, elaboration, and wrap up, maybe. You might just have a topic sentence, one piece of evidence, and elaboration, and then probably a wrap up. You could have 3 pieces of evidence and 3 pieces of elaboration. It's really up to you as to what your body paragraph needs to do, but in the end, you should ultimately always have a topic sentence, non-negotiable. You should always have some kind of piece of evidence, non-negotiable, and it needs to have an in-text citation. You need to somehow talk about that evidence and elaborate, and then you should have a wrap-up. How many times you repeat this step within a single paragraph is up to you. Now, please note that when you have evidence, it should not be longer than your elaboration. So if you have a 4-sentence quote, your elaboration should be at least 4 sentences explaining why that 4-sentence quote is so important. If you have 4, 5, 6 sentence quotes and then only 2 sentences of elaboration, you're going to have what's called a cut and paste essay, where you're primarily just putting together the ideas of other people and not relying upon your own ideas. And what I care about in this essay is your ideas. The evidence should kind of just be the things to support what you already want to say. So make sure you're doing that. Now remember, in these paragraphs go into your sections, okay? So make sure that you have 1 topic per paragraph. That's really incredibly important. So to make sure that you actually do that, I want you to answer these questions about each of your paragraphs. And that's really what the assignment is tonight, is answering these things about every single paragraph that you have within the body paragraph. So you don't have to do this for your introduction or conclusion. But for your body paragraphs in your Google document, I want you to comment on each paragraph and tell me, what is this paragraph meant to prove? Does it introduce a new topic, build upon the topic of a previous paragraph, or oppose the topic of the previous paragraph? What this will ensure is that each of your paragraphs has its own topic, but also that your essay is building towards something. And this is when the idea of sections come in. Within a section, you'll introduce a topic and then build upon it, or possibly oppose it. And then when you hit a new section, you then introduce a new topic. So your sections are kind of divided by when new topics are introduced. And then within sections, you have your new topic and then building or opposing. I also need you to answer the question, using transition in a topic sentence, is it clear to your reader that the paragraph intends to prove this? So you know what you're doing, but have you used transitioning in topic sentences so that your readers know what you're doing? Does every sentence in the paragraph work to prove your intended point? All right. This is for on-topicness. So if you have a sentence that's kind of talking about something else or talking about something, this is more likely what will happen. If you have a sentence that's talking about a topic that was addressed in a previous paragraph, that sentence doesn't belong. You either need to cut it or copy and paste it to where it does belong. And have you intentionally used writing tactics such as analysis, synthesis, classification, compare and contrast, problem solution, narrative, examples, blah, 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 and so forth? This is really what's going to bring you into college writing. You need to make sure that you're using style, that you're using techniques, that you're using your own literary devices and rhetorical devices to make sure that your writing is professional and intellectual. So, you need to answer these questions for every single body paragraph and answer them honestly. You're not going to help yourself by lying because this is to help you edit. So be honest. If something's missing, make a note of it so that you can go back and edit it. Okay? All right. So again, one topic per paragraph. Very important. Now, last but not least, your conclusion. This is when you should be sitting pretty. In your conclusion, you're going to want to restate your thesis in a new way. Therefore, it should not be written exactly the way the thesis was written in your introduction. This restated thesis should reflect the fact that things have been learned in your essay. So your thesis should seem a little more knowing and complete when it's in your conclusion. Then you also want to end on a strong note by using ethos, pathos, and or logos. You should really be using those rhetorical modes throughout your essay, but I definitely need to see it in the conclusion. Usually in a conclusion, a way to end on a really strong note is to talk about the future somehow. So if you're really not sure what to do in your conclusion, talk about what your essay means for the future. Or you could potentially talk about solutions or how to implement what you have shared. Or you can end on a personal note. Personal narrative is also a really good way to end the conclusion in a very strong way. Just however you end it, make sure to use your ethos, pathos, and logos. We've learned quite a bit about this, so make sure that you're using it and you're using it correctly. All right, so this video's reviewed what you need to do for your first night of editing. Make sure that you go through this video, complete the assignment that was assigned in the video, and that ultimately you make any edits necessary to the organization, because tomorrow we're moving on to transitions. All right, best of luck, and let me know if you have any questions.